Grandma's cursed soup recipe that summons ghosts. The night was heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth, and the creaky old kitchen of Grandma's house seemed more alive than usual. Lydia stood before the dusty cookbook, its leather binding cracked and flaking. The book had always been off-limits, sealed away behind Grandma's warnings. "Never touch this one, Lydia," Grandma used to say with a sharp look. "It's not for feeding bellies, it's for calling spirits." Now, months after Grandma's funeral, curiosity burned brighter than fear. Lydia traced the embossed title, Recipes of the Other Side. She chuckled nervously, her reflection on the window faintly mirroring her unease. "What's the worst that could happen?" she whispered to herself, flipping the book open to a random page. Grandma loved to exaggerate. Her eyes landed on soup dispectors. The instructions were oddly specific. Fresh rosemary cut at midnight, a pinch of grave dirt, and a single drop of blood from the cook. Grave dirt? Blood? Seriously, Grandma? What were you into? She muttered, shaking her head, but a pang of defiance stirred inside her. All right, let's see if you were just pulling my leg. The next evening, Lydia gathered the ingredients, her younger brother, Sam, trailing after her like an anxious shadow. "This is a bad idea, Lydia," Sam said, his voice low. "You know how Grandma used to say?" "Oh, come on, Sam," Lydia interrupted, rolling her eyes. "You don't believe in ghosts, do you?" Sam hesitated, his gaze darting around the dimly lit kitchen. "No, but why risk it?" "Because it's fun," Lydia grinned, lighting the stove, "and maybe it'll be the best soup we've ever tasted." She began mixing the ingredients, her movements brisk and confident. When she pricked her finger and let a drop of blood fall into the pot, Sam gasped. "Lydia," he hissed, "that's gross. You're taking this too far." "It's just a recipe, Sam," she replied with a shrug, stirring the thick broth. "Relax." As the soup simmered, an eerie hush fell over the room. The air grew colder, and the faint sound of whispering filled the space. Lydia froze, her hand tightening around the wooden spoon. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Sam nodded, his face pale. "Yeah, Lydia, turn it off now." But before she could move, the soup began to bubble violently. Steam rose in thick spirals, and out of the swirling mist stepped a translucent figure, a young woman with hollow eyes. Who are you?" Lydia stammered, backing away. "I am Alara," the ghost said, her voice echoing like a distant melody. "You have summoned me. Why?" "I didn't think it would work," Lydia admitted, her voice trembling. "It was just a recipe." Alara tilted her head, her expression unreadable. The living should not meddle with the realms of the dead. Sam clutched Lydia's arm, whispering, "Lydia, what do we do?" "I don't know," she hissed back, her heart pounding. The ghost stepped closer, and suddenly, the pot bubbled again, releasing two more spectral figures. One was an old man with a stern face, and the other, a child holding a broken doll. "More have come," Alara said, her voice tinged with sadness. "They are drawn to the call. They cannot rest now." Over the next few hours, the house filled with spirits. They whispered, wept, and sometimes screamed, their presence a constant, chilling weight. Conflict brewed between the siblings. "This is your fault, Lydia," Sam snapped, pacing the kitchen. "You had to play with things you didn't understand." "I didn't think it would actually work," she shot back, her frustration boiling over. "How was I supposed to know?" "Does it matter?" "Now we're stuck with a haunted house," Sam yelled, throwing his hands up. Alara appeared suddenly, silencing their argument. "Enough," she said firmly. "There is a way to send us back, but it will not be easy." The ghost explained that they needed to replicate the ritual in reverse. But with a specific chant from the book, Lydia and Sam scrambled to find it, flipping through the pages as the spirits grew restless. "I can't find it," Lydia said, panic creeping into her voice. "Keep looking," Sam urged, his eyes darting toward a spirit that was clawing at the walls. When they finally found the chant, it required both siblings to perform it together, their voices in harmony. "This better work," Sam muttered as they began. The chant reverberated through the house, and the spirits began to fade. One by one, Alara lingered the longest, her gaze softening as she looked at Lydia. "Do not tamper with what you do not understand." she said quietly before vanishing. The house fell silent. Lydia and Sam stood in the kitchen, the pot still on the stove, its contents now a dull, lifeless sludge. "I'm never touching another one of Grandma's recipes," Lydia said, breaking the silence. Sam gave a shaky laugh. "Yeah, no kidding, let's order pizza." As they left the kitchen, neither noticed the faint whisper echoing from the now-closed cookbook. The next morning, Lydia and Sam sat in silence at the breakfast table, their faces pale and drawn. The events of the previous night clung to them like a shadow. Lydia poked at her cereal, her appetite non-existent. "I barely slept," Sam muttered, breaking the silence. Every creak in the house felt like a ghost. "Me too," Lydia admitted, staring into her bowl. "But they're gone now, right? We did the chant, and Alara said they'd leave." Sam nodded hesitantly. "Yeah, I guess so." But as the siblings exchanged uncertain glances, a loud bang echoed from the kitchen. The sound of metal clattering to the floor made them both jump to their feet. "Did you leave something on the counter?" Sam asked, his voice quivering. "No," Lydia replied, inching toward the kitchen with Sam close behind. When they entered, the room was empty, but the pot from the night before lay on the floor, its lid spinning slowly. "How did that get there?" Sam whispered, his eyes wide. "I don't know," Lydia said, her voice barely above a whisper. She bent to pick it up, but as her fingers touched the pot, a searing cold shot through her hand. She yelped and pulled back. "What is it?" Sam asked. "It's freezing," Lydia said, clutching her hand. The room grew colder, their breath now visible in the air. The cookbook, still on the counter, slammed shut on its own. Both siblings froze, staring at it as the leather cover cracked ominously. "Maybe we should throw it out," Sam suggested, his voice trembling. Lydia shook her head. "I don't think that'll help. Grandma always said the book was connected to something deeper." "Like what?" Sam snapped. "We're not exactly experts on cursed cookbooks." Before Lydia could respond, the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness for a split second. When the light returned, a figure stood in the corner. It wasn't Alara. This ghost was different, taller, darker, its face obscured by a swirling void. Its presence was suffocating. "You meddled." The ghost growled, its voice like grinding metal. "You tore the veil. You must pay." "What do you mean?" Lydia asked, her voice trembling. The ghost didn't answer. Instead, it extended a shadowy arm toward her. The walls of the kitchen began to warp, the paint peeling to reveal an endless void behind them. Objects flew from the shelves, smashing against the walls. Sam grabbed Lydia's arm. "We have to get out of here." As they turned to run, the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. Conflict erupted as the siblings struggled to escape. "This is all your fault," Sam shouted, yanking at the door handle. "If you hadn't opened that stupid book." "I know," Lydia yelled back, tears streaming down her face. "But yelling at me isn't going to help." The ghost advanced, its dark form expanding to fill the room. "You cannot escape," it hissed. "This house is now a bridge. The living and the dead will collide here." Lydia's mind raced. She turned to the cookbook. "The book started this. Maybe it can end it." "You're not seriously going to use it again," Sam said, his voice laced with panic. "What choice do we have?" Lydia snapped. Grabbing the book, she flipped through the pages, her hands shaking. As Lydia searched for a solution, the ghost lashed out, a tendril of shadow knocking her off her feet. The book flew from her hands, landing near the stove. "Lydia!" Sam cried, rushing to her side. The ghost loomed over them, its void-like face inches away. "Your time is near," it growled. "Not yet," Lydia muttered, grabbing the book and flipping to a page she hadn't seen before. The words glowed faintly. "It's a banishment spell," she said, "but it needs fire." Sam looked at the stove. "The burner's out." "Then light it," Lydia shouted. Sam fumbled for the lighter, igniting the burner just as the ghost's shadowy tendrils reached for him. Lydia threw the book into the flames, reciting the incantation aloud. The house shook violently. A deafening roar filled the air as the ghost screamed, its form dissolving into ash. The walls returned to normal, the temperature rising back to a bearable level. The siblings sat on the kitchen floor, panting. "Is it over?" Sam asked after a long silence. "I think so," Lydia replied, staring at the charred remains of the book in the stove. But just as they began to relax, a faint whisper echoed through the house. "Do you hear that?" Sam asked, his face pale. Lydia nodded, her heart sinking. "It's coming from upstairs." The siblings exchanged a terrified look. Neither wanted to move, but they both knew one thing for sure. The nightmare wasn't over. Thanks for watching/listening to this story. Do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel TrenderHQ if you haven't done so already. Also, we will love to hear your feedback on this story in the comment section.